do it your way. And so the bad thing about that is now I've got my studio full of piles of grocery bags to add to everything else I've got in there.
All right, Laura Harvey, I am excited to have you here.
I'm very, very thrilled to be here. Thank you.
The big winner of Hanover Days Best in Show with this prize pig here.
Yep, Blue Wilbur.
Blue Wilbur. Mm-hmm.
My first Best in Show ever.
I think that is very surprising to me because I'm a big fan of your work. As we can see, I have a couple of them, off camera that are from my personal collection. I have won some awards over the years, but Best in Show has always escaped me, and I was thrilled when I found out that I had won it, and I really I love Blue Wilbur. I don't do many animals, but I really enjoy doing them. So this really came together nicely, and it really made me happy. Yeah, a lot of people, cartoon-ish, stuff in a lot of your works, but a lot of it's like mixed media.
Yep, it's all mixed media. A lot of paint, a lot of papers. I do a lot of handmade papers. What I'm working on now, in which Blue Wilbur is done with mostly, the background anyway. I'm taking paper grocery bags and cutting them up, painting them, and collaging on them, and then sanding them back, which is, you can see a little bit of that in here. I also add handmade stamps to it and sand them back. I am a fan of an artist named Robert Mars. He's a collage artist.
Okay.
And I have a few of his photos in this book at home. And he was doing that many years ago on these really big, huge pieces. But the backgrounds were done with paper bags, painted paper bags. So I kind of took that and I made it my own with the stamps and different papers added to that. They're really layers. Everything is layered. Layer.
No, it feels like a lot of texture, a lot of layers.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's basically, I've been doing this now, this particular technique probably for the last at least year and a half. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra work, but I think it pays off.
No, it looks great. And, when we look at some of those other pieces, like I love the way the words show through there.
Yeah. I used to use a lot more words. Again, that is a very early piece. You said 2005.
2005, yeah.
And I remember when you purchased that from me. That was I was glad you got it because I think you got it for your wife because she loves cows.
My wife was in the dairy business, so I have a number of cow paintings at the house.
Oh, that explains the cow out back.
Yeah. That ties in a little bit, you know. Yeah.
But no, I did the cow. I did a goat. These are many years ago again, and that was a lot more paint and a lot less paper. Now it's really come to be more. I work mostly with paper, and I kind of finish it with paint. Like again, getting back to the Blue Wilbur, he is actually done with blue painted papers mostly. Yep. There is some blue paint in there as well, but he is done mostly with papers.
Yeah, you can see that that's like a lot thinner in the paint, and that one's definitely heavier. Right. I think that it's. Not that that's not a great painting. And I'm glad to have it. But you can see the evolution, and it's kind of cool.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I like to always be experimenting. I guess I don't want to say literally like moving forward because you might end up moving backwards for all you know. But I do like experimenting, and sometimes they say still like an artist. You see an idea, and you kind of make it your own. You don't necessarily copy it per se, but the painting of the grocery bags, you do it your way. And so the bad thing about that is now I've got my studio full of piles of grocery bags to add to everything else I've got in there.
I'm still looking to come over to the studio. You knew I was gonna hit you with that at some point.
I want to see it. I want to
We'll,
see it.
we'll talk. We'll talk.
Who was? What was the gentleman's name that you said you found?
Robert Mars.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get you to write that down for me
Yeah.
afterwards because
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of him, but I'd like to see his.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see his work and just see where you draw inspiration from.
Well, as far as the painted papers go, as I said, the works I was looking at were in this book, and they were really big. They were like 48 by 64, and he had the backgrounds were kind of stark, and then he'd have like these old photographs of motels, the old motels on like Route 66.
Yep.
Or he'd have these big photographs of old Cadillacs and things like that. So, which I kind of like doing that kind of stuff too.
Yep.
So, and now he's actually doing more, I want to say, kind of like the Marilyn Monroe type stuff. I mean, he's really, he's quite big.
She finds her way into a few of your pieces, doesn't she?
She does, yes. She hasn't in a while, but every so often I still like to use Marilyn. She's my favorite.
Yep, and then I feel like there's a lot of like beach going women and some surfboards occasionally.
Glamour girls.
Are those just like is that like a photo transfer process that you're using? So you find those images and just kind of mix them in.
Yep. Yeah, that whole process is, I'm getting a little nervous because there aren't as many copy centers that use the kind of printers that I can use in that process.
Might have to
and
buy one.
I won't. Well, I don't even know if I can anymore. It's
an older technology.
Well, it's not really. It's a toner printer, which is more like the old copy machines, and it's the kind of ink really is what it is.
Yep.
I mean, I can print out transfer type things on my at-home inkjet, but when you start getting into the really big sizes, I used to be able to get them at any copy center, but and what they call them, they have the printers there for, excuse me, architectural plans, the really big ones. But now those have all gone to inkjet as well, so they're not using the toner like the laser printer type.
You should talk to Sean Goss.
Yeah.
You should talk to him because he might be able to.
All right, I will.
He's printing expert. The Frame Center's go-to printer guy.
I will.
He might be an interesting a conversation. If you tell him what you're after, he might be able to point you in the right direction.
Well, I'll have to talk to him because I know that the one place that I was going to in Kingston, they just stopped. They just got a new printer, which I can't use anymore. So, so I'll talk to Sean. That'd be great.
Yeah, and so when you're, I'm just looking at the other two. Is like the placement of those that like a big part, like the trying to build that composition, and is that
It's basically I have the idea for the center there, what the main attraction is going to be. And so I'm basically building up the background first, and I'm keeping in mind where that image is going to go. And I try never to put anything right in the middle. Always off to the one side, just maybe a tiny bit. But I just like to have that little bit of.
So like the rule of thirds, you're trying to catch it.
I think, and I
horizontally as well.
I don't really think about it. It just, to my eye, it just, I don't know. It just kind of looks a little better to me. It doesn't look so balanced, I guess, because I'm kind of unbalanced myself. So
unbalanced.
Just always a little off to one side, and it's usually off to the right now that I'm thinking about it, and I don't know why, because I'm left-handed. But they're always more off to the right. So, that's kind of the how I lay them out, and I do, like I said, I do the backgrounds first, and the backgrounds are many layers. I start with I typically work on a board, and I don't work on canvases for the bigger pieces because when you start layering and layering and layering, the canvases over the years will start to droop a little bit. So I do stick to the boards.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I begin with primer and some kind of layer of paper, and then I do a lot of sanding back add more paper, paint, what have you.
Are you working on one at a time, or are you working now? You said you said you had that show at the Bumpus.
The Bumpus
yeah.
in Duxbury, yeah.
Now, when you're working on getting that show together, will you have them all out and kind of be working on them so that they all have like a continuity with
No.
like no, it's one by one, or
The word continuity, no. The only continuity I'm thinking ahead for that show will be the overall. Gosh, I know she mentioned that, because it's going to be next summer, and she mentioned it would be nice to have a lot of the bathing beauty type
Yep.
things. So,
that'll
subject
matter
yeah,
will kind
that'll
of be similar.
there. But as far as any kind of okay, so I want this show to be all blues and teals, and won't be anything like that. But the continuity and that kind of thing will be they'll all be kind of beach themed.
Yep.
But yes, when I work, typically I will be working on at least 2 pieces at a time. And most of that is because of the drying time in between layers. So I
Yep.
can always be working on one while one is drying. And I work with all acrylics, so they dry pretty quickly.
Yep.
Except on these humid days, of course. But no, I can, I do have a good space to work in, and I work flat, so I'm working on a table.
Yep.
And so I can usually, if they're like this size or smaller, I can just line them up and kind of go down the line and add a thing here and add a thing there. But
and you're all over the place on sizes too, right? You were
Yeah.
telling me about a 48 in
Yeah,
the works,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
I've seen some
yeah.
and then that's not even as small. I've seen
No,
really
I go
small
down. Yeah,
pieces.
the smallest I'll do is 4x4s, and those I always have a bunch of those little 4x4 blocks
Yep.
around, and that is when when everything I'm working on is still not, I can't go back to it because it's still wet. I'll start working on a 4x4 because those
use up the paint.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
Can't get it back in the
That's
tube, right?
That's
So you
right,
might as
yeah,
well.
absolutely use them up. And I mix a lot of my own colors too, so a lot of times I'll
Testing.
take any extra paint and maybe add it to something and see what happens. But yeah, so I just I love being in my studio, get the music going, and hang out, and I'm dying for the day that I really allow myself to work on something and just experiment to the point where it could fail.
Yeah.
And I swore it was going to be this summer. I swore I was going to work on something and just try something really crazy and wild. And if it failed, you paint over it. It's not a big deal. And
Maybe
I'm
you should-
telling people that all the time.
Maybe you should just try to do like a really traditional marsh scene.
Ooh.
Maybe you'd fail at that.
I know.
No.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
okay,
it's
well,
the subject matter that you gotta
Maybe.
fail at. Yeah.
I don't know. I've had all these ideas. I said, well, when I purchased the 4-foot by 4-foot board, and,
Yep.
I've got this big, huge panel sitting in my studio. It's the biggest, well, almost the biggest piece I've ever worked on. I have worked on. I've purchased a couple of hollow core doors, and I've done work on
really?
those. Yeah, and those are great because I set those up on a whole separate table, and that I just pick away at.
Yep.
And so I'll always have something like just sitting there, and I can just add a couple things. And those are more like the total collage. It's all just a whirlwind of activity.
How would you describe your style? Like, what type of painter are you? I mean, do you just consider yourself an artist, or would you say you're like a mixed media or like a collage artist? I mean, how would you, if you
All
were
of
going to
the
bill
above,
yourself?
I think.
Yeah.
I usually, when I'm entering a show, I will say my piece is a mixed media collage.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how I came up with that particular title, but I've always worked with. I've never painted.
Yep.
I don't like to do any. I mean, I've taken lessons in more traditional styles, but it always comes back with me to. I don't know. Something's going on in my mind that
Yep.
I just
You have
want
a
to
vision.
be a little bit. not outrageous per se, but maybe a little bit thought-provoking.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, many years ago, I did assemblages, which are kind of like back in the day when you were in school and you did these dioramas. Remember those in shoe boxes?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I used to find these old, cigar boxes or, Coca-Cola crates, the wooden crates, and I'd make these scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I'd use things like, old dolls and kind of a little bit creepy sometimes.
Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
You posted.
Yeah,
some
right.
some of it has a creepy element to it.
But I still have some of those at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I every once in a while I think maybe I should make one of those. I remember I used to win quite a lot of prizes down in Plymouth. I used to enter them in Plymouth all the time for some reason, and but just kind of, and they were fun. It was like just building a little scenario inside of a box. Or I'd find an old frame of some sort, and I'd put a box on the back of it and have this little scenario going on inside of it. And those were a lot of fun to do. I don't know why I went away from them, but I did. I think I just started experimenting more with collage on a flat surface, and that just kind of hooked me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think collage, those sound nice, but I think that a collage on a flat surface is probably more saleable too, right?
Yes, for sure.
It's more about
Yeah.
And did you? I know you had you studied at Marshfield High School, right, with
Yes.
Steve Bozanowski?
Yes, I did.
You're another one of.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to having Steve in at some point.
Oh yeah, I hope you do.
Did you go to like art school after, or?
I went to Mass Art
Yep.
right after high school, and I mean, Mr. B, Steve Bozanowski, photographed my portfolio. He was just the best. We had a really good art class. I loved everyone in the class. We had the best time. And I went to Mass Art right after high school, and I hated it.
Really?
I hated it. First of all, this is back in 75, mind you, 75, 76. And I never even looked into it, but I don't think Mass Art had dorms.
No.
Because I commuted from Marshfield every day. And I think that was part of it for me, was I never got into the city.
Yeah.
I never hung out in the city. And so part of it was the drag of having to drive in every day. I remember I drove all the way in, never took the train. There was a few times where if I couldn't find a parking spot, I would just go home. Because my mother worked all day, so she didn't know that I was coming home, and I was living at home. And sorry, Mom. But yeah, so I always thought at that time that I wasn't quite as passionate about art as all the other students there. And I felt like I really didn't belong there. And so I lasted a year, and I didn't continue with it. I just kind of, I wanted to do something different, and I ended up going to Johnson & Wales because my brother was going there for culinary arts.
Yep.
And I went for the 2-year culinary arts program. I had never worked in a restaurant in my life, by the way.
Yep.
And
So you can cook?
I worked as a chef for 10 years
No kidding.
in Boston, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I worked as a chef. And I liked it very much.
Well, it's another creative,
Yes,
I think of a lot of like other businesses and other things where you're using like creativity
Exactly.
and cooking and being a chef.
Exactly.
Like, it is way up there. I mean, it's an art form. It's just that
I think it is
that
too.
art is just quickly destroyed and
and eaten.
Yeah. That's why people have to photograph it these days, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, but I really, and I still to this day, I mean, I stopped working as a chef because I have eczema on my hands, and it got to the point where I just couldn't touch a lot of food anymore. I was allergic to it, so I had to give that up. And but I still do. I cook at home all the time. I love to cook, and I love to experiment. I come from my grandmother was an excellent cook. She wasn't a chef per se, but so I specialize in soups and sauces and things like that. I still to this day love it.
Nice.
But But yeah, so it's, the arts in general. I mean, I spent many years writing for the Marshfield Mariner. I wrote a humor column of all things.
No kidding.
I did that while my daughter Olivia was from babyhood till she was, I think, going into first grade. And I still have all the hard copies of all my columns. I whip them out, once in a while and read them, and they're pretty funny. But I did that for many years, and so it's just, I've always kind of been there in the world.
And have you always been in Marshfield, or have you?
I grew up in Marshfield.
Yep.
My parents moved here when I was 5 years old.
Yep.
My brother was 3. And we've lived in like 5 different houses in town. So I've been through the Marshfield school system, and went away for a while, lived in Quincy and Boston for a while, then I did come back.
Yep.
And obviously that's where I'm living now, and I'm down in Green Harbor now. And
And have you always been a part of the North River too? I mean, that was where we met.
Right.
When you,
No, actually, my mother-in-law got me, but I didn't do any art at all for many years. When I was cooking.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have time, and I just, I was living in a house with a bunch of other people, and, no privacy, no space to do anything, and so I just didn't do anything. And I think too, the whole thing with mass art, when I left there, I kind of left art.
Yep.
It was still there, of course,
Yeah.
but I just wasn't doing it. But when I got married to Dana, his mom and dad were both artists, and they were both kind of in the they weren't direct founders, but they were in the very early days of the North River Art Society. And Carolyn taught at North River for many years, and she got me back into doing art.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me one of the best pieces of advice that anyone's ever given me about working with art.
Gotta hear this.
It's very simple.
Yep.
She said, never create anything with the idea that you have to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that changes everything about the way you're going to create it, which I have found to be absolutely true. And I think that is for a lot of artists, but I'm speaking for myself anyway. If you've always got it in the back of your mind that, boy, this would be great, I hope this sells, and then you tweak it a little bit to make it, ensure that it's going to sell,
Yep.
you shouldn't do that. You should just, and that comes back to this crazy idea that I had, that I want to just try something totally outrageous, and without the thought of anyone buying it.
Yeah. You just made the bloopers clip too. Never mind. No, I think that's a true statement too. I think that you need to create for yourself, right? And then
Yes.
and if you do, then people will.
Right. If you do, and then it turns out to be something that you like.
Yep.
That's really all that it's about.
I think there's a very similar line in Rick Rubin's book about that. Have you read that book?
I don't think I have.
I'll send you home
Yeah.
with it if you
Yeah.
if you want. It's great
Yeah.
about the creative process and everything.
Yeah, it's everyone thinks that way,
Mhm.
but when you start working on something, it just creeps in. It just and I think that's also a difference between working on art as a kid
Yep.
and working on art as an adult. You get to this certain age where even if you're not a selling artist, you're always worried about what people are going to think when they see your artwork.
Yep.
I think that holds back a lot of people too from actually experimenting and really getting into.
Well, when you said the other thing earlier about getting ideas and inspiration too,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you need to look at it with that mindset too, that you're doing it for yourself, because sometimes I feel like there's artists who are trying to sell. They see someone having success doing something, and
Right.
it's like, and it's not really going your own route. I mean,
Right.
but at the same time, there's also something to be said about mentoring under somebody, and and then you have
True.
a similar style, but you need to kind of branch off and make that your own.
Well, that's when I was working at North River Art Society, and I was seeing people taking classes there with all the different instructors that we have there. I was always saying to, not always like I was some kind of a mentor there to anybody, but my thought is that when you take
I mean, I
Well,
think
it was-
when I was there on the board and you were running the office, I assume you spent some time on the boards over there.
yeah,
and
well, that's how I got involved with North River. I was on the board
yeah,
and went from there. But my whole thought was that you take a class to learn a certain technique.
mm-hmm.
Like if you take an oil painting class, you're learning. If you've never used oils before, you're learning about the materials and the different techniques you can use to create a certain type of painting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get familiar with that, and then you can branch out and make it your own. You take that technique, and it's just like me teaching someone how to collage,
Yep.
which I've done. I've taught classes in collage, and I say this is the basic technique of collage. If you want to do collage of any kind, you need paper and you need glue.
Yep.
That's what collage means. It's the French word for gluing. And once you learn that basic technique, then you go with it. You make it your own. You don't copy me, you make it your own. And I think, and that's the hardest part, especially when you're taking classes, and you'll see that a lot. You'll see, people that take classes for many, many years with a certain instructor.
Yep.
Their work a
Has
lot
a
of
similar
times
feel.
will look right.
No, and I think that there's
And that's bound to happen.
Yep.
After that, but it's just, I don't know. It's more complicated than it probably has to be. Just to talk about it anyway. It's basically getting back to just doing what you like to do, and then.
I think you can feel it, and I think when I look at your works, I feel like you can see your personality in them, and
Right.
I don't know if that means you got a lot yeah.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that I do.
That's
and
why I got to see this studio, because I want to see I want to put that piece into my mind.
that tells the whole story right there.
Yeah,
believe
we'll
me.
get the camera going, and we'll get over there to see that.
Okay.
But I think when you from a standpoint of looking at art, and that's one of the things that I like best about my collection of art is having pieces that I identify with the people that the people who I know as well.
Right. Yeah, I do. I have quite a few pieces of other artists' work too, and I love that. I love supporting other artists, and being friends with other artists and exchanging stories and.
Well, I think of you. I think of such a your time in North River, just always being here, being such a big part of the South Shore art community.
Yeah.
And there isn't an opening I go to or something where I don't bump into you. I feel like you're tied in like this community of artists, friendships and.
I think so too, and I do thank North River for that. I was there for 15 years, I think it was. And I enjoyed every bit of it. I mean, I made so many great friends, and just the creativity and the support behind everybody there is just incredible.
Well, you see yourself evolve as an artist, right from
Yeah.
those type of. But then you get to see how many other people and how many
Exactly.
other artists evolve as well.
Yeah. It's really impressive, and this whole area, actually, the whole South Shore. Between North River Arts and South Shore Arts Center and Duxbury and Plymouth.
Yeah. Hull.
It's,
I mean, it's.
This is the place to be, I think.
That's what this is all about, trying to
Yeah.
bring some attention to that, because
Yeah.
there's an unbelievable community of artists here,
Yeah.
and it's just figuring out a way to keep everyone supporting each other.
Yeah.
And
And I think for the most part that works. I really have gotten the whole time that I've been working within this community. I've always felt the support. I've never felt the kind of I don't want to say jealousies or anything, but it's always been people working together and encouraging each other, and I think that's what makes it work, because you do feel like you can try something different, or enter a show that maybe you wouldn't have ever entered before, and I don't know. It's just the support system is really strong.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people can see a lot of your work on the website, or
You know
no
what?
website,
I
or is it
don't
Instagram?
have a website anymore. That's the next thing I have to do. I never really kept up with it the way I should.
Yep.
And so I've got to get one going again. But
Instagram's got some nice pictures.
yeah, I put things on Instagram. I put them on Facebook. I haven't been doing it as often lately because, well, basically this summer, I haven't been in the studio as much because the summer slows down a little bit, but I'll be starting up again in the fall. I'm going to, I
Yeah,
think,
I mean, sometimes it's better to be producing artwork that people like than building a website or to show it
well,
off.
that's the thing. I have no problem creating art, but then thinking about having to organize it and do whatever
Present
you have
it,
to
yeah.
do to, that's
No,
kind
it's
of
much,
Yeah,
and
it
and
is.
you know,
It's a lot of
and I
work.
think that's one of the greatest things I think about Instagram is a nice way to like catalog
Yeah.
some work, even if you have a a personal page and an artistic page. You
Yeah.
know, it's nice to this is so and so, and then scroll back and see a bunch of the
Yeah.
pieces that they're putting out, or they're proud enough to show off.
Yeah, and I've been taking photographs of some of the things I've been working on as I'm working, so it's kind of like beginning to end kind of thing, which I haven't posted
Mhm.
any of that in a while. So yeah, that's probably a good nudge to think about getting back into getting it out there.
You
so
got a
to
lot
speak.
going on. You had the store too for a while.
I did. I loved that store. And
Yeah.
I tell you right now, and I tell everybody, if I win the lottery someday and I don't have to worry about money, I would have another shop in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because I really liked it.
No, I actually, I'll show you the pictures afterwards. I had, when I was gathering the pieces to bring with me, I had two
Yeah.
pieces from the shop too that are hanging up. I just didn't feel like taking.
Oh, no kidding.
Two little ones, yeah.
Oh.
But you had all sorts of great stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, I had 7 or 8 other artists and artisans in there. Mostly people who did things that I don't work in, such as jewelry and things
Yep.
like that. And it was a really nice mix of people. And I had a little space out in back where I could do classes. I had some smaller, like, drop-in classes, and that's where I could work too. I made all these little signs and things and it was just. There's always somebody in there,
Yep.
and just to
No, I
chat
popped
or
in there
whatever.
a couple-
I know.
yeah.
I
I feel
really,
like I feel bad. I'd stop in. I'm like, oh, just breaking up
it
your
was-
painting of
no,
the day.
it was fine. I just loved it. And like I said, I would do that again in a somewhere like Plymouth or
Yep.
and I don't know. It's something I always wanted to do.
Mhm.
And when I left North River, I did it. And
Yep.
I unfortunately I didn't pick a great spot.
It's just not enough
Yeah,
traffic.
That's
is
all it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I had plopped down somewhere else, I'd like to say I'd still be there. But,
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah, maybe Frame Center pop-up shop of Laura's.
Oh.
You have an old sign from it?
I do, actually. My husband made me a big metal sign, and I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I probably do somewhere.
We'll talk more.
Probably
Maybe-
somewhere in my
may-
studio.
Maybe if you're getting close and you need to test the waters, maybe a little Frame Center pop-up.
Well, yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah. No, I used to love. I would like going in there, and I think that's like you mentioned it, and it's kind of a similar thing here. People coming in, and
Yeah.
But then again, I feel bad too. Sometimes I'm talking people's ears off downstairs. But there's a community of artists,
Yeah.
and it's always nice to hear other people's ideas and
Absolutely.
thoughts.
I mean, it's just if you didn't do that, if you were just by yourself all day or working, in
On a
an
computer.
office or somewhere, you just wouldn't have that. I mean, again, I used to have that at North River. There would always be somebody coming into the office. That's why I never got any of the work. That's why instead of working 9 to noon that I was supposed to work,
Yep.
I'd work 9 to 4. But you know what? That was all part of it.
Yeah, it's a
That's
lot easier
all
to
part of it.
get things done when the doors are locked.
Yeah, yeah. And they used to say that at noontime, why don't you close your door and then you can get your work done? And I said, I can't close the door.
Mhm.
I just can't. I don't feel that way. I just want to see people.
Mhm.
And
I think that your time there, probably similar thing to here. It's like I see so many, you see so many artists,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
fun to
absolutely.
see what they're producing, see how they evolve.
Yeah. You really do. I think back again, yes, on all the people that came in and took classes who are now
getting to be
The
well known.
teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're teaching, and they're selling, and they're showing, and they're really doing great stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got Donna Rossetti Bailey's coming in to
Oh.
record it, and she's a great one too, because you know how many students of hers
Oh,
are now
So many.
teaching and
So
and
many.
seeing success, and I was talking to her, I think it was yesterday, and
Yeah.
she's like, I'm just kind of coming and brag about how great some of my students are doing.
yeah.
And when we were making the crack about the marsh, I made the crack earlier about the marsh scenes. I mean, that's I think
Yeah.
because of great teachers like her in this
Yep.
community, you have people that are doing similar subject
right.
matter.
That's
and,
right. Yeah.
And
Well, we do have a lot of marshes too.
Yeah, no, we do.
You know,
Oh, Marshfield, yeah,
Marshfield,
yeah. But
Yeah.
but I think it's cool to see some of that lineage too. Like you see who's learned from who.
Yep.
You know who's now teaching, and then you
Yep.
might even see like a teacher taking a class from somebody that
See
was
that
a
all the
student
time.
at their at some point, because a lot of times these groups you have a lot of talented artists
Absolutely.
that are
Yeah.
there, and that class is just giving them an opportunity to collaborate or
That's
be surrounded by other people.
That's right. And there's a lot of the instructors, or or some of the more well-known artists they're taking workshops still, like all over the country.
Yep.
And just to learn a little something new here, or learn, and I think if you just do that, you're always learning. Everyone's always learning, right? And it's just the more you take in, the more you decide, well, maybe I didn't really like that, or
Yep.
I do really love that, and yeah, it's all good.
Awesome.
Really all
Well,
good.
I think that this is another conversation that in my head I'm thinking, well, we got to wrap this one up, but I could keep talking to you forever. I mean, as we've had conversations before,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm saying this would be Laura Harvey episode 1, and we'll come have it,
okay.
Laura, we'll get you back for another, or maybe you'll let me come to the
Well,
studio.
yeah,
and see it.
we'll talk about that, definitely.
Awesome. Well, lots
Right.
to talk about. Always great to see you, Laura,
Great to
and
see
I
you.
appreciate you coming in. It's been
This has been great. Yeah, thank you, Dave.
cool.